And I did not find them terrifying at all. I found them quite friendly, like the way that you'd be if you were a child and you were out in a meadow and a butterfly landed on your finger or something. These were encounters with other life forms in the cosmos that I perceived both cognitively and intuitively not only meant me no harm, but meant me well.
Out of curiosity, I know you've said that you feel that, for example, the United States government, the president's presumably aware of what's going on. Do you think a lot of this is kept hidden from a president, or do they have full access to everything that's going on in these closed and secret military projects? I mean, for example, can we assume that every president, Nixon, Carter, Reagan, Bush, both the Bushes, and now Obama, is aware that we are in contact with extraterrestrials and aware of things like the Pegasus project in time teleportation?
Well, I was speaking about the fact that I know the last 4, possibly the last 6 U.S. presidents were given an awareness of their destinies as president decades in advance so that they could psychologically prepare for destinies involving such great responsibility and importance. If I look back on my experiences on Pegasus and the fact that they had me lying to my own mother about what I was experiencing, and if I look at how information was only parceled out to me every time I had contact with, for example, the CIA, when I was being briefed about something by Courtney M. Hunt, who was my contact officer at the CIA, I have to presume that certainly during the period before they become president, people who reach that high office are only having things shared with them on a need-to-know basis only standard, because that was the standard that I was subjected to both when I was officially in Project Pegasus and then later. They have a way of reaching you and getting information that they think you need to know in a way that would really astound people if they knew how efficient the U.S. intelligence community is doing that, basically dropping an operative into somebody's life and then bringing them up to speed about something. I would guess, based on my understanding from the ufological literature, sort of the literature of the UFO cover-up, and my own experiences in Project Pegasus, and also as somebody I've tried to contribute to ufology. For example, I brought the principal trilogy about the Fatima incident of 1917 as a series of close encounters with extraterrestrials, which was written by Dr. Joaquin Fernandez and Fina Darmada, 2 Portuguese historians, and other scholars. I brought that series into English, so I've tried to contribute to humanity's understanding of the extraterrestrial situation. And that was driven not only by my own interest in contact experiences, but also the experiences that I had in Project Pegasus that related to the extraterrestrial situation, and which I'll be sharing in my book. And I have to conclude that the U.S. intelligence community never shares everything with anybody. It's part and parcel of the way it's constructed, the way it's architected, is to keep information compartmentalized. And so the story that President Bill Clinton told, that when he became president, he asked the CIA who shot President Kennedy and are we being visited by extraterrestrials, and he didn't receive answers that satisfied him. And that's when he presumably tasked the attorney John Podesta to begin exploring these issues in deep politics, because he, after all, had reached the presidency. And we also see this emphasis in the MJ-12 literature, that the president himself is not always, or ultimately it will be herself, is not always granted access to the NATO cosmic top secret, above top secret information. I think that's probably what has been going on. Even the President of the United States, whoever it is at a certain time, is not given access to all of the above top secret material. They're only given access when they need to know the information, which means the presidency of the United States has not only been debased in terms of the people who reached the presidency having prior knowledge of their destinies as president, which was never within the contemplation of the framers of the U.S. Constitution. We're sure of that. And also being debased by the president not having total information awareness, such as President George W. Bush tasked Admiral Poindexter to achieve at DARPA. One really wonders whether government itself has been usurped by the cult of intelligence, and that's another concern that I have, that's causing me to speak out. That's not what the framers of the U.S. Constitution intended. It shouldn't be going on in other advanced societies as well. And if the president or other national executives, chief executives in other countries don't have access to what their governments know, how are we going to prevent a certain faction within a country from completely enslaving the entire population or woefully oppressing it in terms of its access to future information, taking commercial advantage of future information gathered via quantum access, going into independent one-off treaties between private corporations and extraterrestrial civilizations? These are all threats to the public sphere and to the public and form of governments that should be serving the global public that we have to address when we think about whether, in fact, the President of the United States is even allowed to know everything that the U.S. government knows. It's a very serious issue.
If it wasn't so potentially frightening and dangerous, it's almost farcical, the situation you describe, of so many departments scampering around with their secrets and hiding stuff from each other, and it's just like an endless cycle of drama and intrigue and just spinning aimlessly around, basically.
And Emily, we see that comic opera in the fact that around the time that Courtney Ann Hunt was basically placed in my life in 1981 to both investigate me and also train me for the jumps to Mars, it was clear that the CIA didn't know entirely what the truth was. And yet, look at the situation. My dad was literally the $1-a-year man on teleportation between the principal engineering company involved, which is the Ralph M. Parsons Company. In fact, when Ralph M. Parsons bought the largest civilian yacht in the world, which had previously been owned by the Iranian arms merchant Adnan Khashoggi, the ship was not called the Pegasus, and Ralph M. Parsons had never owned anything called Pegasus, but he rechristened the ship Pegasus II. And that's until very recent. I think it might even still be on the Parsons Corporation website pertaining to the biography of the founder of Parsons, Ralph M. Parsons, who was one of the two lieutenants to Stephen Bechtel during World War II, the other being John A. McCone, who became CIA director. But we have a situation there in the part of my story in the early 80s where, Courtney M. Hunt enters my life. I'm reporting for the UCLA Daily Bruin while also they're engaging in social disruption campaigns against me, I presume, because actually this helps answer a previous question that you asked. They were, I think, interfering in my life because they were afraid that I would publish something about Pegasus on the pages of the UCLA Daily Bruin, because I've done a feature piece about the experiences of one of the atomic veterans at Yucca Flat in Nevada during the 1950s, a kind of a feature news piece, sort of a slice of life kind of op-ed piece in which I was describing what happened to this particular atomic veteran, to just draw public attention to this whole class of U.S. veterans who had been irradiated, even having conditioned black come over them, where they were actually breathing radioactive dust and, developing lung cancer and so forth after a number of years. So I think they were afraid that I was going to spill the beans about Project Pegasus when I was writing for the Daily Bruin, and I was having all manner of weird things going on: surreptitious druggings, abductions, intimidation, bizarre infiltrations of my social life that I've documented thoroughly. I mean, the very person who was my roommate during my third year of college at UCLA was never enrolled at UCLA. I've verified that through the UCLA registrar's office. Somebody with that name and date of birth has never been enrolled at UCLA. Okay, so those are the kinds of social disruptions that I was describing. But the truth of the situation is relative to the history of the U.S. intelligence community, that only 10 years after I had my experiences in Project Pegasus, the CIA itself was investigating me because the institutional CIA didn't know exactly what I had been involved in, but clearly had my name on some project files that it had tasked a team of CIA people to go and perform a field investigation to figure out who I was and what I had actually been involved in. And yet my own father was, had been a technical consultant to the Navy, the Air Force, the CIA, and other U.S. agencies for decades. So that's how I'm highly compartmentalized the situation is. The CIA sometimes has to investigate itself to figure out what it itself has done. And that causes me to